Who was your first trainer at Ajax? Your first coach?
Yeah, we had Ed Engelkes as a head coach, and I had a great goalkeeper trainer. Sjoerd Woudenberg. A little shout out to Sjoerd. He's now a goalkeeper trainer in Cape Town, actually, for FC Cape Town, I think they're called. But he was amazing. He was a very young guy, very ambitious. Yeah, I worked my ass off. I loved training with him. He was great. Yeah. So Sjoerd, if you hear this, shout out.
Yeah, no, send his name to us, you know what I mean? And we can actually put it up on our socials, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So just another one. So a transfer from a dream. So when did it become a dream for you to actually an achievable goal? To know that you could be a professional?
Yeah, it's a good question, because when I grew, I think just when I moved, I think I was 15 years old when they started the Eredivisie. And I remember when I was like 14 years old, I got drafted for the national under 15 team, together with all the great stars that the Dutch national team now almost. And I remember that, I was sitting there and I thought to myself, I looked at my team and we had all these great names: Merel van Dongen, Lieke Marten, Siri Worm. Who else was there? I mean, many more. Tessel Middag. And I thought to myself, this is a team, and I knew instantly that all of us were going to make it. Desiree van Lunteren. These are all players that have played at the top already, a part of the national team mostly. Just for some reason, I remember very well that when we were that age, I just looked left and right, and I knew, okay, we're going to make it, at least to the national team. I didn't know at the time if there were going to be female professional teams, because obviously we didn't have that at the time. But when did I realize that I could play for Ajax? When it actually happened, because obviously I played for ADO and that kind of thing, but we were all waiting on Ajax, and Feyenoord's now finally also joining. I think it takes too long for them to join, but for many girls this is great.
I've seen that. Yeah.
So
that definitely that's in, yeah, because when you look at the Eredivisie, you got to be thinking PSV, Ajax, and Feyenoord. Do you know what I mean? Like, great clubs, great histories. You know what I mean? So you were obviously managed under Serena Wagman Gladbach. Is that right?
Yeah.
And what would you, so as a coach, and obviously she's obviously coached the Dutch and the England women's team. So what did you think of her as a trainer?
To be honest, I've always kind of really taken a liking to her. She's, in my opinion, I haven't really. I mean, I've seen many women's trainers and coaches, but she, for some reason, she can make, like, from nothing, she can make a team. She's really, I don't know what it is, but she knows how to put everybody in their strengths, put them on the right position. It's almost like she's playing Moneyball. She knows exactly what to do. I mean, I remember when, like, Ajax came, a lot of players from ADO Den Haag, where she was the head coach at the time, left. So she, lost a lot of good players, and she had to fill it up with unexperienced players, and she did so well with that team. She can just, I don't know, she knows how to form a team. But she's also tough in respects, as in, if she thinks that you're going to be trouble or you're not going to add to the team, she'll just make the hard decision and just put you on the side. And I think that's really good about Serena, is that she's not afraid of making decisions and going for that. She knows what she wants and she goes for it, and I think that's what's brought her to where she is.
Yeah, no, I definitely looked her up, and she seems to come from really good breeding, you know what I mean, as a trainer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure. And those are, managing Holland and England, you would have to be a strong personality for that job.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That definitely,
Yeah.
100%. And so when you look at, like, the teams you played for in your youth, and then the ones a male player may have played for. So when you were around the two comps, then you would see the Ajax players training, you know what I mean? So you'd have been there at a very interesting time, because Ajax still had a lot of good players.
Yeah.
Do you think, in terms of when you look at the level that they're playing at, and so whenever you guys are a new team, but would you not say it comes with that expectation, what you represent?
Yeah, for sure. So when we joined, everybody expected us to become champions all the time, and it took us
Right.
5 years, and I wasn't part of that. But yeah, there was a lot of expectation for us, pressure.
Mm,
We had to not only did we have to win, we had to play very beautiful football, the Ajax way. So
right.
that was, I think, something as well. But I mean, you get used to that. And the tough thing about being Ajax is that other clubs, they hate your guts. They think you're
Yeah,
spoiled. They make,
absolutely.
they. I remember, I think the first time we played our first game ever, we played against Heerenveen at the Toekomst. And they had made this banner about, like, this kind of written banner about all these things, and that we were spoiled, and like, oh, we had Mercedes. But I think to myself, nobody knows, but we actually, all of us left everything we had at other clubs to go to Ajax for €250 a month, because that was just basically
Wow.
how we started. We didn't care because all we wanted is play for the club that we loved. So it was really annoying when other clubs or people would say, "Oh, you're doing it for the money." I think, what money? There is no money. We're doing it because we love this
Right.
club and because we're the best. And Ajax took us because we're the best. So there's a lot of
Right.
jealousy when you play for Ajax. There's so many girls that have said, "I hate Ajax. I don't want to play for Ajax." And then a couple of years later, where they're playing? They're playing for Ajax. But I don't. I mean, it's fine, but don't say that you don't want to, because we know you want to. Everybody wants to play for Ajax. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
Ajax, you know. So
Definitely.
it's simple as that.
Yeah. And it's very interesting, because I remember when I was speaking to I came up, to, when I was at the two comps, I came up and I was getting a coffee. You know, when you come up to the restaurant or
Yeah,
up to
yeah,
the canteen,
yeah,
and I'm waiting there and I'm getting a coffee, and then guess who comes over? So Jacques Swart comes, or Mr. Ajax comes
yeah,
over, and he
yeah,
starts winding me up. He says, "Oh, Nick," I love to wind you up out when Holland drew with Northern Ireland." I'm like, no, come on, Jack, man, don't start that today. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like it's a very special club when
It
you're
is.
around it. But I think you have to have been in a club. You know what I mean? A club. You know what I mean? So for myself, I was quite lucky. So I came from a similar background, and you know what I mean. Whenever you're looking at that, and like what you just said, why would people make the claim that? Then it's like what you're saying. They're saying they don't like them, and that sort of thing. But I've always found Ajax, out of all the clubs I've been to in Holland, I've found them very, very friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I've got nothing but positive things to say,
Yeah,
nothing but positive. So,
yeah,
and that's what it's about when you go to a club, isn't it, Laura?
yeah.
It's about how they treat you as well, but
Mm-hmm.
also when you're in that environment. And I think it's like you can't beat it. Like, it's, I would say to people, your playing days are your best days of your life. They
Yeah,
really are.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
no, it's great. It's like an adventure, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you're looking at that, what was the biggest challenge you were facing when you were trying to make it as a player? What would you say that challenge was?
Hmm. I mean, that's a good question. I think for me, I've been challenging staying fit. That was really, I mean, I've um have these ligaments in my entire body that just don't really stay where they have to stay. I guess they're very I don't know, not very tight. So my ankles have always been an issue. Yeah, and my shoulder, because the whole thing was with my shoulder. Apparently, when I was 17, when I had the injury, it was misdiagnosed. So they said I had something else than it really was, because apparently I had played without a ligament for 3 years in my shoulder. So actually, it was kind of
Okay.
insane that I could play all these weird things. So for me, it was staying fit, I think. Um, and yeah, and somewhere I think. Mm, Back in those days, the one thing that I sometimes found hard was that y- you were always kind of boxing up against women's football. Like, um, they don't always get the respect I think that we deserved. People,
Right.
like, they would say, "Oh, you play for Ajax." Oh, well, when I played for Ajax, there was a different vibe because it was Ajax. But when I say I played for Zwolle or ADO, nobody really cared. Or, "Oh, it's just women's football." But also, like,
Mm.
stupid remarks like, "Oh, often do you train?" And like, twice a week. I'm like, "No, I'm playing football like 6, 7 days a week. What are you talking about? You know, I spend all this time and I'm studying and everything." But you put in so much effort and you work so hard, and you're studying, and some of us still work. we don't get the recognition, but just because they compare it to
Right.
men's football, whereas women's hockey
Right.
gets compared to men's hockey, but still they get far more recognition because I don't know, a lot of people still think that women's football is shit and that they tell you to your face, like, oh, I don't look at it because it looks
Right.
like crap. And I'm like, well, have you seen any game in the Eredivisie lately? It's not much better.
Right.
So I think that's always been really hard. I don't like a lot of people say, oh, it's ridiculous you guys don't get paid the same. I say, well, that's stupid. Men's football is way overpriced, so to say. But the thing that I really did miss is the actual recognition. Like, okay, we're working really hard and we're doing very well. And that's I hate it when people throw in my face, oh, it's just women's football. That just takes so degrading. And that's the biggest thing I think I've
Right.
always had to fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more, because I definitely think I've watched the women's game extensively, and it's a very high standard. If you look at them, and I seen, like I was saying, when I remember I had a lad and he came over to Holland and he got destroyed, and he was a good player actually. He was offered a contract at Royal Antwerp, so and this girl just destroyed him. So yeah, and I would definitely agree with you there in terms of. One of the things I would definitely like to see, I would like to see an increase and more money. If you think about the money that's coming into the game, Laura, I think it's disgraceful that women are not paid. I'm talking at least, because if you look at the bigger players in the women's game and what they make, do you know what I mean? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm looking at some player, like I know a player, he's at Tottenham at the minute, right? And this is a player. I don't think he'll ever make. I don't think he'll be a big enough player and he's making 300 grand a year. He's bang average. He's okay. And it's funny because I spoke to his dad, and you know what I said to him? I said, if I was playing against your son, I would turn around, because the sort of player I was, I would have went up to an opponent and said, mate, if you come near me, I'll kick you over that fence. And I said, and when the referee's not looking, I'm going to punch you in the face. And when he's not looking, when his back's turned. And I said, so you're going to know what he said. I said, they call me a certain word for a reason. You know what I mean? And so, but you know what I mean? It's like, but then you see the girls' game and you see the commitment. But I also think it's the way politics are, if that makes sense. I think things are, you know what I mean? So I think if women have given up time, and I think it's very, very difficult. And I see a lot of stuff on LinkedIn at times to do with women who they're coaches, but they're mothers as well. You know what I mean? And so people are always holding that against them, which I think is wrong, because I think they need to be given a lot more grace. You know what I mean? For the sacrifices they've made. Do you know what I mean? Because but I think that's just the way. It's the world we live in. But hopefully that's going to change, and there's going to be more. A pay that's competitive, where they don't have to work a job, because working a job and playing at the same time, that's hard. Like, that's really, really tough, because
for sure.
You're divided, aren't you? You know what I mean? You've got to provide for yourself, but if you're only making 250 euros, like what you've said, 250 euros a month, I mean, that's not a lot of money. So
no, it's not at all. I mean, obviously
especially in Amsterdam.
I mean, it's changed, right? So that was back in the days, and it's become better. It's still not great. But I think like the biggest issue, perhaps, or the biggest issue, I don't think you should just like throw money towards the women in salary. Although I do think that should be upgraded, but I think it also starts with giving like exposure, because obviously, why do men earn so much money? Is because they are media, and there's there's sponsors, and there's all this money coming in, TV rights, and all of that kind of thing. But I think it starts with that. Give us a bit more exposure and show, and make it perhaps a bit commercial, because then you don't have the excuse, oh, but you guys don't deliver any money. No, because there's no sponsoring, and you guys are not making or trying to earn money off us. So it's a bit of the chicken and the egg story. So if you do both, then it will also be, and don't try to sell women's football to men. Try to sell women's football to the women that like to watch women's football. That's another thing that I kind of, oh, but men don't watch it. No, so you're targeting the wrong audience, because there's so many women that do want to watch it, and enough girls that want to watch it. So, I mean, that's kind of, there are always these stupid arguments, but they never kind of really try to dig into it and figure out, okay, but how can we make it equal? Because just
Right.
saying, oh, doing the exact same thing obviously is not going to work. So you have to do it differently, but do it the
Mm.
right way. And as you said, and those, as you just mentioned, like if you play football and you still have to work, you can't devote yourself completely to football all the time.
Right.
So you're
Right.
tired, you can't, exercise as you should. Whereas men can sit and, that's all they have to do. So obviously they
Right.
can get so much better and get fitter and really perform on a certain level because they can devote every single second to that sport. And that's the
You
difference.
know, so whenever you were going through your
Mm.
playing career, so did you have a backup plan? So whenever you were going into it, and I always say to people, if you've got a backup plan, it means you don't. If you have a plan B, it means you don't believe in your plan A. That's
No,
always been like my. But if the money's not there, that's completely different. So you kind of do
yeah,
have to have a plan B. So
yeah.
what was kind of like your plan B, or what in terms of when you were in school and you were leaving and the uncertainty of the women's game and contractually, you know what I mean, you wouldn't be making as much as you'd like to make. So
Yeah.
what was your plan then from that perspective, Laura?
Yeah, well, that's funny. Also, for me, it wasn't Plan B. It's always been Plan A. But Plan A was also studying, because knowing. So my plan basically was to play for many years on. My dream was always to win the Champions League, and that was my plan. Play football, go higher and higher and higher, but alongside finish off my studies, go abroad, learn things there, but also never just playing football, but also doing other things to develop myself. Because I truly also believe that,
Mm,
just playing football, it's just that. And as a person, you can learn so many things outside of the football field or the training grounds that will add onto your personality and also give you a lot more in football. So my plan has always just been actually to do those two things, and then
right.
eventually after my career to see either work in sport in some way or other. But I just had that plan, knowing that actually, to be honest, I think most athletes that like hockeyers, tennisers that don't play perhaps at the highest level, they all have this plan, right? They all understand that
Right.
they're not going to earn millions of euros and then be able to quit after their football career and then say, okay, well, now I can invest or I can. No, they all have to study. They all have to figure out how am I going to progress after my career. So it's always been Plan A. But unfortunately, due to my injury, Plan A became completely different. Obviously, I finished my studies and I just started working. And then when I started working, it was just diving deep into work life, finding out what I wanted to do, and eventually progressing to working for Jogo, which is amazing. So yeah, I found my way, so to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is definitely I think it's definitely one of the things just to hit on. So whenever you're going in, so in terms of where your career's kind of gone, so um so obviously you played with a lot of great players. So you had a great career though, even though it
Hmm.
was it was a lot shorter than you would have liked.
Hmm.
Um um so obviously playing for the national team, that was a big highlight for you as well. So
Hmm.
so you can actually say I got to the top of my profession. And that's always a great. Is that kind of what you do take, even though it ended early? Is that kind of
Um,
the
yeah. Well, although I hit like the national team, I never played an official game because as a goalkeeper, it's kind of tough. And the moment that I did, I got injured again. So
mm,
I might have played, on the highest levels. I still haven't played in the top league. I didn't win much. I haven't played on a World Cup or anything. So there's a lot that I've wanted to do and never did. Obviously, I've
right?
hit, I've reached further than most, but still, for me, uh, well, what I feel still that well now I'm kind of over it, but in the beginning when I had to quit, what really hurt is that I dare never got to reach my full potential. I never got to show what I'm actually made of, or at least try and show, or even perhaps maybe I wasn't good enough, but then I would have known. And now I always I had that feeling like, oh, what if? And I would have loved to just really prove that to myself, actually, that so Olympic Lyon was a close call. At least I can say, okay, that I played with Olympic Lyon, played with Ada Hegerberg, or at least trained with her. those kind of things. But it's, for me, it should have been way more. But it's, you have to put it at rest, I guess.
Yeah, and I think so. Whenever you're looking back, so obviously your retirement obviously came in obviously 2017. So we look at kind of your post career. So your post career, and so what did you study in university? What did you study for in your
Yeah.
studies?
So I started off doing international business, and then eventually I went to the Johan Cruyff University, which is for top sporters. That was sport marketing and economics. Wasn't I mean, to be honest, it wasn't exactly something I really aspired, but at the time I did say, like, okay, I want to do everything for my football career, so I'm going to make it a bit easy for myself, so to say. And eventually, to be honest, it didn't really matter, I think, what I've studied, because I've always kind of just progressed, and the moment I started working, I learned so much more. And to this day, I still, I listen to any kind of podcast about work, read books, now as well. I mean, I don't know, I think life is one big journey of learning. So I noticed that it wouldn't have mattered much what I think would have studied, because as my job now here, I mean, I'm leading the marketing, but still every day I'm learning so much. So
So tell me this, Laura. So as you're kind of looking at and obviously, so obviously being with Jogo, so so once you retired, who did you go and work, what was your first job once you left, once you stopped playing?
yeah, so I came back from the States and I had to have a job really quick. So I worked for Under Armour on their finance department. In the invoicing, it wasn't very interesting, but I learned a lot about companies and organizations. And while I was working there, I kind of was thinking, okay, this is not where I want to end up. The company was great, loved Under Armour, really great company. But then I found a job in a fintech company in the sales and marketing department, and then went to a startup who did work with many other startups, and I did their sales, and then I progressed to where I am now, Jogo, where basically, as a startup, you do a lot of things, but actually the main thing I'm concerned about is the marketing. So basically, I'm head of marketing here at Jogo.
Right. And so in terms of working in like the startup space, because that's when you're really, it's like it's great because you want to see it become something very
Mm-hmm.
special, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
I think anybody that's actually, it's so funny because I speak to I was speaking to somebody recently, and he says some of the applications that he gets for people who want to come into a startup, and he was saying to me, you know what I mean? He said, Nick, why are these people? He said they do not have startup mentality. You know what I mean? And it's like you've got to do a lots of
Yeah.
other things, and if you're not really willing to work hard, it's like why are they applying for the position? I
Yeah.
just don't get it. You know what I mean?
It sounds it
And so
sounds
it's
fun, right?
yeah,
I mean,
exactly. But then when you ask them to come in and to give of themselves, and I always go back to my football background and saying, well, as a player, you got to go and earn a con. Nobody gives you any contract. You got to go and earn it. Do you know what I mean? You got to come and get it. Do you know what I mean? So if we kind of look at, we're just going to look through. So obviously, Jogo's about a football that inspires to help players to reach their true potential.
mm-hmm.
So providing insight information using data tracking technology. So it obviously started in 2021. So you guys are in your first year, Laura, right?
Yeah.
So what made you go into like the marketing and technological kind of career path? Because it's quite a vast space, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I just really like technology. The way it's like really changing things, making our lives so much easier. The mere fact, we're here on a video call and everything's easy. And I
Right.
really truly believe that technology is the way forward that will also create sustainability, but also it helps people connect, right? So one of the things that Jogo is trying to do as well, in the simplest form, is give kids, or at least young players, the ability to train but also connect with others, and perhaps get information that they wouldn't have, because they don't have the facilities like I had. So there's a lot of things we're working on, but the main focus really is to become a platform that for players to develop, and for trainers to help players develop. And now it's basically with data, video, AI, and we're building our own sensors. But in the future, it could be anything what is next and what will add to that goal of ours. Because if you're living in Brazil or Africa, the chances that you have good facilities or at least a good trainer are way less. The ability to be seen is way less.
Right.
And if you just have a mobile phone, then already you can do the trainings and get visibility, but also have a bit of a social aspect to it. So that's basically what we're trying to do.
It's interesting. So obviously, so whenever you look at that, and you look at the overall aim, of obviously Jogo, what would you like to see? So you'd like to see Jogo kind of, so obviously they're going to work on more with like younger players so they can reach like their full potential. But do you think do you see a lot of things happening with AI? Because there's a lot of people that are afraid of AI. A lot of people, when they look at AI as like a technology, but also in terms of 5G and how that's kind of going to go. Do you see what Jogo's going to do? What do you think you guys have a ceiling, or do you think Jogo can go beyond the ceiling in terms of within the market? Because obviously football has become very technologically dependent.
Yeah. So I don't really see a ceiling, to be honest. And when it comes to afraid of 5G and afraid of AI, I always think to myself, well, that's because you don't understand what it is. AI is comes in many forms and shapes. I mean, there's computer vision, machine learning, and everything does something else. And just like everything in life, you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. So it's funny because people don't understand what it is, and they get frightened like on the news because artificial intelligence is fake news and all these kind of things, or they know more about you than you know about this. And then I think, yeah, but that's because people are using it for the wrong reasons. But that's the same. I don't know. You can do that with anything, right? People can have things and use it for the wrong reasons. But for us, the reason that the AI is basically just to capture data and to give it back to you and to tell you, well, this is how you're performing, and perhaps if you want to improve, you should do this or that. So it's basically it's what often happens in sport nowadays. There's a lot of technology, there's a lot of data, but it's not always told or visualized in an understandable way for everyone. So sometimes you really have to be like a data analyst or a sports scientist to understand what you're looking at. And what we're trying to do is create dashboards, like visualizations, that everybody can kind of look at it and say, oh, I understand this. As people use Strava nowadays to run, and then they see, okay, I've run so much, but they think data is scary until they see that it's not. But yeah, we're trying to make it more accessible as well.
And so I know I mean I quite like a lot of the stuff that Jogo is doing. So whenever you're looking, so the product that you guys are launching, where are you guys? Who's that gonna? Who will that be available to? Things like that.
Yeah, so basically we have a mobile app which is for the players, and any player in the world can actually download it, start training with it, and eventually we'll have these sensors that go into your shoe, and you can basically track all kinds of movements and pace, workload kind of things during a training or a game. And then there's a platform which is basically initially, well, the platform as is now just for trainers that can kind of manage their players in the sense of creating a database and giving them feedback based on certain exercises. But in the future, we'll be adding different levels. We want to create this place where you kind of have this 360-degree view of a player. So basically, when you look at injuries as well, that you can kind of see, okay, somebody's been training really hard, and this you can kind of see that they perhaps need a rest, or they're actually training too light. Basically that we make decisions based on data instead of I think or I feel or I've seen, but I'm based on real data.
So whenever you're actually looking at in terms of whenever you look at like what give you the drive to kind of go in this area? How do you kind of generally feel since you've become a part of Jogo? What's kind of been your process? Because obviously you want to stay kind of within the game itself. So would you say from a business, from the studies degree that you've done, and obviously your experience that you had at Under Armour, and obviously Under Armour, very, very, very good organization. And you know what I mean? When you look at them, it's quite interesting. You know what I mean? So you went in the economics, and especially working in finance. And I was actually speaking to an accountant recently, and he actually said the best degree that people can have is if they have an economics degree, because it really opens up a lot of doors, and it helps them to make a decision and especially economics and marketing. I think that's a great degree to have, to be honest, because, and I think the fact that you've been to, so when you were going through that, and how did the Jogo opportunity come up for you in terms of the decision you were making to become a part of an organization like this?
Yeah, it's actually it's well, not per se a funny story, but I met David, the founder, through my old work. So he was one of our clients, and we kind of instantly as well kind of hit it off, spoke about football, and he pitched what they were basically doing, because that was nearly a year ago, and they just started. They were like a month old, and he was telling me about Joga, and my eyes just lit up. I remember that I was telling about it. I was just thinking to myself, oh, I wish I had this when I was playing football. This is absolutely amazing. And then basically we kind of stayed in touch, tried to like help him out, become like an ambassador. And then eventually it was just very simple. Like, yeah, I think the both of us, we need to work together. And I want to be part of this. Not just the football part, but just the whole technology, the idea. I love working with startups because you go from a 0 to 100, so to say. Ideas are flowing all over the place, but it's a lot of hard work. But yeah, I just saw to myself, I know this market. I have the background to help this company grow. I have, the network to help this company grow. And it excites me every day. I enjoy it. The team is great. So it was I think I had 2 conversations with David, and eventually it was just like, okay, let's just do this, get started, and let's start running, and we'll see where we end up. And now, I mean, we just moved into a new office. It's 4 times the size we had. Funding's going well. Everything's going great. Products are almost live. Hiring new people. So very happy to be here.
And because I know you were saying, so you guys are going through like investment rounds. Because I know with tech, that's one of the things. Somebody tells me I'm in tech, I'm like, yeah. So you're requiring a lot of cash, a lot of liquid. Yeah. So what have you guys kind of? So are you guys in like a? Because tech companies usually go through a series of investment rounds, don't they?
Yeah.
And then as they grow, they get more and more.
Yeah.
And what would you say is kind of your thoughts, kind of with that, in that space?
The whole investing, the funding. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm quite used to it already because I've been close to all of these types of companies already. I find it's a very interesting world. And I've seen, for my old company, we're a bit of an agency trying to help startups and scale ups, also on the funding side. So I've seen many startups trying to look for funding, and it's been really hard for them. And to be honest, for us, it has not been too hard because we really have a great product, and a lot of investors from the first round were still investing in the second round. So that's also, it's good because we have a lot of faith. We get a lot of faith.
A good sign. Yeah. It's a very good sign.
But it also, in the world of investments, you see also a lot of shady things, in a sense. Well, not per se shady, but you can lose an investment, right? So a VC can invest, or a family office, and they will never see that money again. It's a gamble. But what I think feels very comfortable here is that if you receive money, you also feel the burden to actually achieve, right? So you're working with somebody else's money. But the great thing, I think, with Jogo is that every penny that we kind of get, I feel like we're doing people almost a favor, because I don't know how to say that, but I know in my heart that this company is going to go big, just because of the confirmation that we've been getting from very important players in the football world. I mean, and with players, I mean clubs and organizations. They've already kind of given like a stamp of approval. So for me, I think funding is great because it can help you grow, but only if you can really make that happen, right? And always, of course, nothing is certain, but in this case, it feels good to, that people trust you with their money, and you get the opportunity to actually do what you really want to do, and build out that dream
Right.
and build this amazing company, and that's great.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. And I think it's very interesting. So being in like a startup environment, and I'm gonna kind of put this out there because it's quite interesting, is that would you say, because I've always known Holland, when you're living in Holland, and obviously their taxes is quite high, so it's a very socialist country, Holland would be, wouldn't it? It'd be very socially minded. So being in a startup, I would say if somebody's going into a startup, and it's interesting because I have people that I've been around even within my own organization, and they were socialists before they came. Now they are no longer socialists because they realize where jobs come from, how economics really work. So, and I suppose you went to America, Laura. So, would you have a very capitalist mindset? Like a very
Um,
capitalist, because capitalism is about growth, it's about creating things, it's about
mm,
improving things, creating
yeah,
jobs, and creating employment.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the Netherlands is socialist depending who you are, I think. There's a lot of people that would say it's not socialist enough or vice versa. But my mindset, I mean, I grew up in a household where my father is an entrepreneur, my brother is an entrepreneur, my other brother is an entrepreneur. So I grew
Okay,
up that creation is everything, basically. And you should, I think
okay,
they were, to be honest, I think my dad's pretty right wing in that, like, the entrepreneurial thing. And I think in that sense, I'm a bit more of a lefty. Not that, I think I believe in creation, I believe in opportunity, but I also believe in equal opportunity. And the discussion
yeah,
nowadays is often that that's it. If not everybody gets the same chance, then how what's then it's not fair to call, yeah, to believe in capitalism in that sense, because um, at times only if there are equal opportunities do I believe in capitalizing, because then if everything, if everybody has that opportunity to capitalize on, that opportunity, so to say, then I believe in it. But so I have a little bit of a social feeling in me. That said, I don't think it's getting, there's nothing more greater feeling, I think, than creating something, building up something yourself.
absolutely,
Because
yeah.
just owning your own things because you worked for it and you created it, I think there's nothing better than that. um so that's more my heart where to go, and that's why I work in this company. I mean, I'm not I'm not an entrepreneur officially. I am freelance, so I have my own company, so to say, but I still work for a startup. But I am
Yeah.
an entrepreneurial spirit in the senses I take risk, I take action, I create my own chances, and I capitalize on those. Um, so yeah, and I often think people think that they don't get the same opportunity or chance, but they
Right,
don't see it or they don't take it. So there's a bit of a thin line,
right.
right? But some cases, I do believe that not everyone is granted the same opportunities. So in my opinion, it would be sometimes better if there were more opportunities for everyone, or at least
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, I think that I think if somebody's born into poverty, but I always go back to what Bill Gates once said, and he said, if you're born into poverty, it's not your fault. But if your life ends in poverty, it's totally your fault.
mm-hmm,
And I would be the agreement with it. But also as well, sometimes people can not get a good, but I've seen people. I mean, I like to see what companies can do and how they can actually grow. And I think that that's one of the things I love about football is because football gives you lots of opportunities.
For sure.
But it also means if you network a lot, you know what I mean? That's kind of how, because I remember you reached out to me on LinkedIn, and we were kind of speaking there, and that's what I love about, I love networking, to be honest. I really do. I
Same.
think it's
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing, and because I like to hear other people's stories. They're like, even having you on the podcast here, and we're getting to really, you know, to see that side of your culture, the footballing culture you've grown up around, even when you're even looking at, like, saying your dad's entrepreneurial. And then, but I would agree there needs to be a line in terms of where somebody's given the opportunity. The only thing that I suppose that I would kind of think about is if somebody's being given something, and I find in football this kind of exists sometimes where, and the reason why I believe a lot of footballers go bankrupt is because they have a very different perspective. They have a perspective of, you know what I mean? I just need to be given things. No, you got to work for it. You got to
Yeah.
earn it.
Yeah.
It's not, and I think sometimes in the world we live in, it's kind of become like that. So, but when you're in a company and you're seeing it grow, and you're seeing capital going in, but also one of the things that I also believe is that, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this, is where people can be given opportunity, but to not be given it where they become kind of arrogant. They become arrogant because they're like, oh yeah, I didn't really earn that anyway, but I still get to have it. You know what I mean? And I think when I look at, like, the left, and I do look at the right, but there's also things on the right that I don't agree with either, because I believe that it's sort of about creating opportunity, and people being given a chance. And I think that as an entrepreneur, your job is to your job is to give, not to take. That is your job as an entrepreneur. And also, I know as a CEO myself, I actually feel like I work for my my employees or entrepreneurs that are part of my organization. They don't work for me. That's my personal view.
Yeah.
As a CEO and founder, I don't have a very different approach from that perspective. And I think that, and I think in the football world, and I think in terms of where you're involved in, you're kind of seeing that with Jogo. You know what I mean? You're creating, it's innovation. You know what I mean? Which is really, really good. So, and I think that whenever you're looking at this, so if you're kind of going forward, and obviously you've obviously had great influences in your family, Laura. So what would you say, what goals do you have, like, for the future? What would be your goals for the future?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, we're a startup, so the coming 5 years, I want to grow this company out to be the norm. Basically, everybody should know Jogo, and the philosophy that we have here, it should be widely carried. So basically, that's going to be my coming 5 year plan, and then we'll take it from there. I mean, there's so much to do still in the world of innovation and everything, and but for now, I'm fully committed to Jogo and reaching our goals, my own personal goals with Jogo, because one of the things that I love about technology is that you can enhance things without spending a lot of money, and you can reach a lot of people. So I'm kind of hoping that especially the women's game can gain from Jogo and enhance their level, make it more professional. In any way we can try and figure that out. But yeah, so
And
growing the company.
talking about that, I'm so glad you mentioned that. How fast do you expect women's football to grow once COVID is over, and people can return to, like, stadiums and stuff? What are you anticipating?
God, I don't really know actually. The Eredivisie isn't really widely watched. The women's national team is very, very popular, obviously, because they win a lot. I wouldn't really know. I hope they progress more and more. I hope that the commercialization becomes more like Shanice van der Sande. She was on the Pepsi Coke with Pogba and Messi. I loved seeing that. She's also one of my old time friends from back then. It's amazing. I hope that kind of grows. The visibility of women in football, in sport in general. That's what I'm really wanting to see. So instead of just using men football in commercials, that now we
Right.
add the women as well. And to be honest, I wouldn't mind to see that in all sports, right? Not just football, to give a bit more visibility.
And also, so when you're looking at, like, the visibility,
hmm
and in terms of, like, growing it, would you ever work? Would you? Because I know you mentioned earlier, would you ever
hmm
go and work as a manager in football?
Um,
Do you think?
no, I don't think so. perhaps like a very specific goal trainer, or otherwise like the more of the mental. I would say that's accompanying players on their mental journey, but not a coach. No.
Not a coach. Yeah. No, that's it. It's quite interesting because I know when I've spoken to coaching educators, and I remember speaking to a guy and he was coaching a player. He used to play for Northern Ireland. He's a top player. Played in the Premier League for 20 years. And he said to me, Nick, he was one of the worst coaches I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So sometimes you definitely see that. And would you move into another sport? Would you think about like another sport?
Not really in particular, to be honest. Maybe, who knows? I used to play tennis a bit, but that's about it. But
you never know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You never know. Yeah, because I know a lot of sports science applications, they like to work with other sports, and what have you. I mean, I follow American football a good bit, so I like to educate myself on other sports, and it's interesting because you used to work for Under Armour, and I remember when Tom Brady used to work with Nike on certain things. And I remember he was doing a thing with this before he went to Under Armour, and he did a commercial called Every Day, and it's like 12 Tom Brady's, and then it becomes 1,200, and then 12 million, and it's just every day. And he's just throwing the football, and it was really, really cool marketing. I was really, and it's funny because I got to meet him in Chicago, Tom Brady. And so from obviously mainly I've been in football my whole life, but seeing American football, I really got into it, you know what I mean, in a big way. So it's great and I believe that position, to be an NFL quarterback, I think it's the toughest position to play in sports, to play in any sport, because I think what you've got to know intelligence-wise, and you can only appreciate it when you go to a game because you can understand. So when you look at another sport, it's always good because you get to see. I suppose you're more objective, I suppose, than you would be in football. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In football, you'd be more biased about certain things. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it's interesting, But Laura, I've really enjoyed our talk today. You know what I mean? It's been really positive. Laura, if people want to get a hold of you, where can they reach you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, obviously. That's, I think, the best place to get hold of me.
Okay.
And well, you can always email me at laura@jogo.ia. But that will be best. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then also, do you use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram?
I have Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I don't really use it. I'm one of those people on Instagram.
Okay. So the best place
is LinkedIn. Yeah.
The best place is for LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm the same as you. So don't worry, I'm not. I usually stick to LinkedIn. So guys, like I say, anybody wants to reach out to Laura, you can reach her. You can reach her on LinkedIn. So it's Laura, and then it's Duray, DURY, and then also don't forget to hit the notification squad, and for those subscribers that want to subscribe, you get all the latest content from Continental Soccer TV. And thank you for another episode, and thank you for joining us, Laura.